This episode is sponsored by the Freedom Builder System. For just $57 a month, you can get my custom Biz Builder AI, plus membership in the Freedom Builder community. Think of it as having me, your personal business coach and corporate escape Sherpa, right in your pocket 24/7. Biz Builder AI is your business building tool with 5 Sherpas in one powerful tool. It's a coach in AI form that helps you choose the right idea, create offers, build your financial runway, and market yourself without the cringe. And the Freedom Builder membership gives you the training, community, and accountability to actually follow through. So you're never doing this alone. Think of it as clarity, tools, and support all in one for less than the cost of a dinner out and a fraction of what you'd spend on private coaching. Check the show notes for the link, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Gen X Remix, Midlife, Laughs, and Next Acts, the podcast for bold women who are ready to build a business that actually lights you up and escape corporate. Yes, friends, in that order. I'm your host, Tabatha Jones, the Corporate Escape Sherpa, and today's guest knows a thing or two about what it means to play the long game. Joel Goldberg is the Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, keynote speaker, and author who spent over 20 years sharing stories from the world of professional sports. As a longtime host for the Kansas City Royals, Joel has learned what it takes to build a championship culture. And now he's helping leaders and teams everywhere apply these lessons off the field. We're talking about the power of kindness, consistency, and connection, and how the lessons of baseball translate into everyday leadership, and why embracing curiosity and even a few curveballs can completely change the game in midlife. Let's dive in. Hello, Joel, and welcome to the Gen X Remix. How are you doing today?
Tabatha, I'm great, and I am very much and will forever be a Gen Xer. So very happy about that, and proud of it too. I suppose you are as well.
Absolutely. That's how the podcast ended up with its name. I think as Gen Xers just know how to have fun, be a little bit feral, and really share some great stories that not only help inspire other Gen X friends, but also other generations that are trying to figure us out because we're a little bit of a closed book sometimes. Well, I would love to start out our conversation by asking you to share your remix story.
Yeah, my remix story is an interesting one because, if that question came up 10 years ago, I really wouldn't have one. It would have just been the next job, but I've been in television now for 31 years. And so very fortunate. I think I'm one of those rare people that had dreams when I was a kid in the 80s, like all of us Gen Xers, had dreams of becoming what I ended up becoming. And so it truly is the definition of living my dream, which is mind-boggling to me that it all worked out. And so I was really happy with all that. But along the way, I was asking myself the question, really just the question of what else? Because even when you achieve your dreams, there's still, what's the next step? And so I've been in TV as a television broadcaster for 31 years, climbed the ranks, small markets to bigger markets, local news, mostly doing sports, and then eventually all sports all the time. When I got away from news and got into traveling with professional teams as a broadcaster, that was it. I mean, I couldn't have been happier. But then the question became, as a guy now that works 6 months of the year for baseball with the Kansas City Royals, what else? And if you end up being in a place, this is where it's different, I think, than some other people's remix stories, is that usually a remix story, at least to me, and you've heard more of them than I have, involves some type of career change or massive pivot with some type of, and I'm just going to make one up here, of I'm a recovering fill in the blank. I'm a recovering attorney. I'm a recovering corporate America, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm out on my own. And that happened for me, but I didn't lose what I had before. It was an addition to. And so what happened was I could never figure out the answer of what to do with the other 6 months when it wasn't baseball season. And I did what I knew. I went out and tried to find some other sports, and I did a lot of laying around and sitting around with, with family and off time. And then the light bulb went off on a suggestion of a friend. You know a lot of people, and you have a lot of experiences around leadership and around teams. You're the fly on the wall that has all the access to this interesting stuff. Why don't you start a speaking business? And so I started speaking on culture, leadership, teamwork, team building, all the soft skills that I actually think now, more than when I started 9 years ago, have become even more important with the evolution of AI and everything that we're living with automation in this world. And so so for me, Tabatha, the remix was not finding something unexpected that I loved as much as television. It was finding that I had this deeper purpose to be able to go out and help people, to be able to go out there and share experiences that might be able to help them in their walk of life. And that to me has completely re-energized me, not just with something new, but it also kind of helped refocus me on that dream that I was living and make me more curious and hopefully a better broadcaster as well.
That is a very cool remix story. As I'm sitting here thinking, I'm smiling. I'm like, man, if I had 6 months free a year, what would I do with it? And I'd probably do something very similar to you. Like what else, where else can I add that value? Where else can I build some more things that'll help other people? So I love that story so much. For our listeners, they're probably kind of smiling, especially those who know me, because I am not a sports person. Full transparency. So my sports analogies are this big, but I love talking to people from so many different walks of life and coming from corporate leadership, understand how that team dynamic ties between sports and corporations. So this is going to be fun.
And one of the things that I love, I'm so glad that you said what you just did, and I didn't know that. But my assumption with anyone I meet is that I have to make this assumption. And I'm talking about networking and I'm talking about my audiences. I have to assume that there's someone out there that doesn't just have a lack of interest or has a lack of interest in sports, but might even like really not like it. They dislike it. I play it this way in my head. I got to go to this thing. I don't even like baseball. I'm not even a sports fan. I don't want to deal with this guy, some whatever stereotype that someone might come up with. Like, I don't need to hear from some, locker room talking jock. By the way, I was never that good of a jock. So I'm the guy that I tell everybody all the time. A lot of my broadcast teammates played professionally or played in college. I didn't. I played when I was young and I loved it. And I love to talk about it. But I think that if I'm doing my job right, I need to be able to talk to the Tabathas that are in the audience that don't like sports, but they're going to get the message. And so if they don't get the message, I haven't done my job right. If they do get the message, it really doesn't matter whether it's sports or not, but it's unique. They're unique stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's for me, it's an attention span when it comes to sports, but understanding how the things tie. I remember I was probably in my early 20s and I was working at an event for my job at the time. And I'm talking to everybody, and all of a sudden I'm talking to these two men, and the people in the booth get really quiet and they're kind of staring. And what is wrong with you all? And so the conversation's done and they're like, do you even know who you were talking to? I'm like, it was two of the 49er players that were kind of a big deal back in the early 90s. And I was like, I had no idea. And then just recently.
It was just Joe Montana
right?
And Jerry Rice, no big deal.
Just recently was in a room with a couple of former Warrior players. And they're like, do you even know who? I'm like, no. I know I'm in a room with tall men who have some really interesting stories.
But let me let you in on a little secret here. And I talk to people about this too. And I think it applies to all of us. It doesn't matter whether it's sports, whether it's some movie celebrity, some famous musician, I don't know, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, a politician, which might nowadays probably be more of a bad thing than a good thing, but someone that's in the public spotlight. And I only understand this from my world, which means, okay, like in Kansas City, being on TV every single night, it might be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. I go to New York or San Francisco, nobody's going to know who I am. I have to assume that when I go to the grocery store, anywhere that I go around here, that there's a chance that somebody might know who I am, which means that I have an opportunity to put a smile on someone's face, that I have an opportunity to give them a pleasant experience. And that does matter to me. Uh, with that comes, the pressure of making sure you're looking up, making sure that you're reading people, making sure that you're able to connect with people. I bring that up only because I couldn't possibly know what it's like to be that famous 49ers player, but I travel with those guys. In my case, with the baseball team, I understand that every step that some of them take is scrutinized everywhere they go. And so my point to you, with not knowing who they were, and that may or may not have been an embarrassing moment for you, or maybe not, or somebody gave you a hard time about it, or maybe not. But I always say to people that most of us, in whatever public eye that we're in, for those of us that are, we love when someone doesn't know who we are. It's not an ego bruise at all. It's sort of like a nice clean slate, like, hey, you get to know me for who I am or the conversations we have, and not based on some preconceived notions or you're somebody this and that. The anonymity to that is actually really refreshing to a lot of these guys. And so what I tell people a lot is that if you could treat the biggest superstar in your world, maybe it's that big CEO that you're trying to do business with, or your boss, and if you could actually treat them like a human being, that's different for them, and it's really welcome.
Yeah, I love that. And I am one of those people. I mean, I want to hear everyone's story.
Yeah.
I love, just hearing that perspective. And then, as you said, not making them feel like I want something, or that I want them to perform, or I expect anything of them. It's kind of a cool place to be in, I guess.
Yeah.
I have been embarrassed a few times with not knowing who people are, but we move on.
It makes for great stories later.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm still telling them, and they were years ago. So let's talk a little bit about your other 6 months of life. So you're doing these great speaking events, and tell me a bit about how you tie that to the work that you've done with covering these championship teams, and how you're applying it to leadership and building trust at work, because those things are so needed right now.
And I guess we know they were always needed. It feels right now like it's more needed than ever. But I suppose we've always made those statements, right? I mean, 10 years ago, we probably said it's more needed than ever to build trust with your teams. And it's true. It certainly feels like it more than ever right now, just because we're so disconnected due to the ease of technology and AI, and the pandemic certainly didn't help. And there are a lot of great things, right? You and I are sitting here talking on a podcast that we never would have done years ago because of the ease of this technology. Knock on wood, assuming that as a podcast host myself, that it works the rest of the way. We've learned how to deal with all of that too. And so those are great things. That's progress. But I think that we're losing that ability to connect face to face. And that, to me, gives me an opportunity to be able to help with that. Because for me, one of the things, like for sports fans, I'll have a lot of people say, wow, you get to talk about baseball every day. Yes, it's great. If you're a sports fan, or just take whatever your favorite thing is, if it's theater, if it's music, whatever it might be, the arts, if you got paid to go and watch that and talk about it every day, yes, it's great. It also becomes very normal, and I don't take it for granted. But to me, the sweet spot now is getting to take the lessons learned from that and to be able to help other people with it. And the one thing that I tell people all the time is that, yes, I have the dream job. And yes, I get to travel all over the country and fly on team charters and get all the perks of the fancy hotels and all that type of stuff. None of which, by the way, is meant for me. I'm just lucky to get caught in the middle of it. And I try to be very respectful. It's their world. It's their place. I'm here to do my job. But the lessons that are learned every single day um, transfer to any type of profession, whether it be something more blue collar, whether it be the C-suite and everything. I always like to say, from the boardroom to the break room to the locker room, it all works, because in the end, we're in the people business. So when I get up on stage, one of the first comments I'll make is something along the lines of, how many people in here dreamed of being where you're at right now, that this is the profession or the company that you thought? And almost no one raises their hands. Maybe you get one or two, right? I wanted to be a lawyer. Oh, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be in insurance. Usually not, right? I wanted to be a banker. Some, you get a couple, but you might get 1 or 2% in the room.
Mhm.
And I'll say, I'm doing what I dreamed of doing, at least from a television standpoint. It might not have turned out exactly the way I thought because I host pre and post game shows. Those didn't even exist when I was a kid. And then, oh, by the way, on the side, I've got a podcast, things that didn't exist when us Gen Xers were growing up back then. But I knew I wanted to talk about sports, and I'll always make some comment about, there's proof because my first grade teacher when I was 7 years old was calling home to complain to my parents that I was giving updates in class to my fellow first graders on the previous night's baseball game. So I was getting in trouble for that stuff. What I didn't know was that the baseball business and the television business is no different than, and then I'll fill in the blank, the insurance business, the marketing industry, whatever it is, whoever I'm speaking to, the banking industry. It's the people business. We're all in the people business. And so when I go to work every single day and I get to go into these locker rooms and meet I don't meet them, I know them all now. I'm not really working on anything other than building relationships with them so that I can earn the trust to get better answers, to get more candor, to get more insight, and to be able to tell better stories. No different than what you're doing. No different than you and I chit-chatted for 5 minutes before we came on just to get a little bit more information and a little bit of feel for me. And by the way, I was getting a feel for you too, whether you knew that or not. That's the way you do this. And that's the way anybody could do it in whatever profession. I'm not going to work to talk about baseball per se. That is the end result. I'm going to build relationships with the players, with the coaches, with the staff, with the training staff. When there's an injury, I feel like I'm going to get a better report and better information because of the trust and relationship I have with the head trainer to know what can he tell me? What does he have to hold back? What can I talk about? What can I not talk about? And when I have a track record of doing that over and over again, I get more information. Those are skills that apply to any profession. That's really what I love more than anything about taking what's going on with these championship teams. By the way, I've covered a lot of teams that were the exact opposite of championship teams. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned from the losses too.
Absolutely. I'd say sometimes we learn faster,
Yeah.
harder lessons, but faster lessons from losses. But winning is a lot more fun, that's for sure.
Always.
And I love how you tie the relationship piece and the building trust so eloquently, because I think that's a big piece of what's missing right now in corporate leadership. And it's not every corporation, it's not every leader. A lot of our listeners know my story about kind of what threw me over the edge and when I finally just said, I'm out. But it had a lot to do with a leadership team I landed under that just, no matter how much influencing I was doing to shift the culture to more of a trusting, relationship-based, employee-first culture, we couldn't get there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the work that you're doing is so important. And because I also believe that a lot of people are sports fans, I think people listen a little bit more when you're able to tie it to something that they're interested in. Do you feel that there's been a bit more of a disconnect? I know we talked about technology and all of that, but do you feel that there's been more of a disconnect as leaders' generations have shifted, or maybe this post-COVID world has shifted? I feel that gap in a lot of spaces, especially when I'm working with clients, that gap in that relationship, especially between leaders and employees. And I'm curious about your perspective on that.
Oh, totally has. And by the way, the locker room or the clubhouse, as they'll often call it in baseball, the clubhouses I walk into, they're really not all that different in terms of personalities and challenges than any workplace. They might make more money and their job might be different, but it's still the same thing. Like, for instance, and then I'll get more specific in answering your question. When I walk into a Major League Baseball clubhouse, whether it be the Kansas City Royals or the Visitors, or if we're on the road, the home team, if I walk in there, when guys are there, and some guys are out doing work on the field, some guys are in the training room or in the dining room eating or whatever. They've all got their routines of what they need to do to prepare for a game. But if they're at their locker and they're not busy talking to someone. They're sitting on their phone, scrolling, whatever it might be. And I'll use a lot of social media, if I shoot a interesting, fun piece of video that I post on Instagram before a game during batting practice, and I put it on my Instagram story. And with Instagram story, for those that use Instagram, you'll know that you can look and see who's viewed it, which you don't even really know if it's a view or not. They might have looked at it for 1 second and moved on. But if I shoot something of interest during batting practice when they're getting ready for a game, and then an hour later, I'm getting ready to do my pregame show. Maybe, it's commercial, and like everybody else, like my attention span, right? And so I'm doing what they're doing, and I'm looking, and half the team has viewed what I already posted. What are they doing in between batting practice and time to get ready for the game? They're probably getting a bite to eat. The clubhouse is closed at that point to us, so I'm not in there. And they're scrolling their phones until they get ready to go to work and perform. It's no different than the rest of us. Now, as Gen Xers, we didn't grow up with that, right? We grew up with a lot of other things, but we didn't have that. But to your point, we're getting closer to some of those leaders being millennials and eventually being Gen Z.
Yeah.
They were raised differently than us. So also back to your question, for the older generation you work with, and we have 4 generations in the workplace now, but for the boomers, and certainly for our generation, Gen Xers, I'll say to an audience all the time that as a Gen Xer, when I grew up, we basically had a mindset of suck it up, go to work, and if you're not feeling it on a day or you're not feeling great, just suck it up and keep doing it. There's no excuses, right? And now what do we hear about? We hear about work-life balance. In the baseball world, we hear about guys being given days off, whether they asked for it or not, because the analytics and the metrics say this is the ideal time to rest. We didn't have any of that growing up. You just went and did it. And oh, by the way, and this is going to sound like a complaint, I'm doing it a little bit to be funny, but I know that it's going to resonate with you. We were latchkey kids. Here's your lunch for the day, or make your lunch, and I'll see you when I get home from work. Let yourself into the house when you get home. Don't bring any girls over. Behave. Get your homework done. See you at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Right? And so that's fine. That's how we were raised. And I'll tell an audience all the time that I don't know that I'll ever change. I'm trying to get better. I still believe in sucking it up. In 18 years of Royals baseball, I think I've missed like 1% of games. But I'm not asking you to do that. And that's what our leaders need to do. They need to start thinking the way the younger generation does, or at least be open to the way that they do it. And what we've come to learn in modern times now, this is true in education, this is true in almost every way we go about things, is that there's not one simple model and solution that works. So we have to be open-minded to what works for the younger generation and understand how could we possibly expect them to do things the way we do it when they've got tools and resources that we never had. And so how do you get there? How do you understand more of what they want? You listen, you ask. If they actually feel heard, not only will that feel good to them, but they might actually listen to a little bit of your perspective as a Gen Xer or a baby boomer and understand that there might be some lessons to learn from you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a firm believer in all forms of diversity. Mm-hmm. Generational diversity is part of that. I feel like we'll start with millennial. If a millennial has mentors that are Gen X and boomer and even Z, you can learn things that make you just more well-rounded and a better team player. Mm-hmm. Same for X, same for boomers. Having younger mentors, younger partners that you can learn from, it just opens your mind. I remember we were going through a bit of a business struggle back in my leadership days. And it was really interesting because I would ask a few people, kind of what's going on? I feel like something's a little off. Oh, these youngers, they just want to just slam it out there and just automate everything and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, huh. So I would talk to the younger people on the team. And so, hey, what do you think is going on? Oh, these guys are just not open to change. We can't get anything done. We could do it so much faster, but they won't listen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, So finally, I call in an HR person. I'm like, okay, I need somebody who's not Gen X. I need somebody to just come in and listen with an open mind because I'm hearing both sides of this and I see both sides and I see how it's clogging us up. Really, it's stopping us from being as innovative as we could be. It's stopping us from being as successful as we could be. So she did. She went in and she did that, had that conversation. And that's exactly what was going on. The younger generations were more comfortable with automation. They understood that they could learn this new code, write this process, and save us hours a week of work. The older individuals were thinking, well, if they do that, I'm not going to have any work to do. We're going to not have jobs. We can't do that. We don't want to be a team player when it comes to this. It's a terrible idea. And being able to listen to all sides and then bring them together with what if we do this? What if our jobs change a little bit? What if, and it ended up building really great trust amongst the team because then they realized they could start having these conversations. They didn't need to stay so boxed in. And it made a huge difference. And then one of the things, as you were talking about the baseball teams and the experience there, all I can think about is that line from, I think it was, oh, geez, I can't think of the movie now. But there's no crying in baseball.
Oh,
that
yeah,
hit me because
of Their Own.
That's it. League of Their Own. I love that movie. But I remember telling somebody that I worked with, she was telling me her story about she had broken down and cried in front of her boss. I'm like, there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying at work. No crying. Hold it in. And, we laugh about it still because she's like, oh my gosh, remember all those days? I'm like, yeah, I do. It's like, I'm glad you learned to rein it in because people get scared when they see tears. But anyway, I digress and go down that story a little bit. So kind of back to you. Let's talk a little bit about, let's go to your books because I'm interested in the books that you've written. So you've got Small Ball, Big Results and Small Ball, Big Dreams.
Yeah.
What led you to writing those books?
Okay. So the first thing, I think probably like anybody, I always thought, boy, maybe one day I'll write a book. You don't have to be on TV to do that. I mean, how many of us that are listening right now have at some point had that thought, maybe one day I'll write a book? And by the way, how many will actually do it? I mean, I fell into that category of, I've got so many stories and I don't know what I'm ever going to do with them. And I don't know that I've really documented them well enough anyway, but I have this unique experience, which by the way, we all have unique experiences, but there probably is a book there. But if I'm being honest, looking back now, I probably was never going to write it. And that's a whole different discussion about just start and go. All right. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. If you've got something that you're passionate about. When I started the speaking business, everyone and their mother said to me, if you're a speaker, you have to write a book. And I'm not sure then that I said, okay, well, then I got to write a book. And I don't know that that's the right reason to do it. And I don't know that I had the right material to do it, but I got this great piece of advice that I think ended up being a little bit life-changing. And then I'll tell you about the books. I met with someone who gave me the advice. She said, you're not ready to write a book. Start a podcast instead. And I would have been offended by that if it wasn't true, but it was actually a relief to be like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to write a book because I don't know what I'm going to write about. It's end of 2016, beginning of 2017. For anyone that is a sports fan, you'll know that, or at least I'll remind you that the Kansas City Royals won the World Series in 2015. If you're not a sports fan, Tabatha, I'll just put it this way. Small market Cinderella story that won a world championship for the first time in 30 years. That's a pretty sellable story. But the books had already been written. So, okay, I'll start a podcast. Well, how did the Kansas City Royals win a World Series? Yeah, they had some talent. They had good talent. They didn't have all the superstars. They didn't have the biggest payroll. This is a great story, by the way, for the company trying to compete with the Amazons and the Googles and the big boys of the world, so to speak. And I knew that people like a Cinderella story. People like the little guy, provided that they're not, their team's not a rival of Kansas City. But we all can learn from that, right? We all can't be the New York Yankees, so to speak, the Los Angeles, whoever has the biggest payroll. And so I thought, I'm going to talk on this podcast and my speaking about really what I think helped them win it. And that was culture. strong culture, good people. That's relatable. So when I started the podcast, which is called Rounding the Bases, I'm not, and I clearly could see that you're the same way. I am not, and I'm not against anyone that is. I'm not a guy that is ever going to have a list of questions. Here's question one. Here's question. I get some people that I know, broadcasters that are like that too. I'm not a script guy. For better or worse, take it or leave it. You're going to get what you get, and it's going to be just an organic conversation with some direction. But I thought there are three questions that I want to ask every podcast guest, just to sort of have something different and unique with a little bit of a baseball spin to it, even though it's not really a baseball podcast. So the questions are this. I do it towards the end of my podcast. It's what I call my baseball themed questions. What's the biggest home run you've hit professionally in your career? And I had to make very specific, say professionally in your career, because every guest early on told me marrying their spouse or something along those lines. And I'm like, that's beautiful. That's great. It's not helping my audience with how they can grow. So professionally. Second question, what's the biggest swing and miss you've taken, and what did you learn from it? And there's some good lessons in there. And the third question, which leads me to the books, was what is small ball? And so I felt like I needed to explain that for the non-baseball fan. For the baseball fan, they'll know that small ball are the little plays that happen in a game that don't get as much attention, that probably don't make guys as much money. It's not as fun and sexy as the home run, and it might not even show up in the box score. That's small ball, the little sacrifices, things that you do to help your team win that might not be quantifiable. But when that guy comes back to the dugout, he gets a hero's welcome for doing something that his teammates recognize. And I thought, boy, isn't that really a culture question? Isn't that the secret sauce behind any company? What's the small ball? What are the little things every day that lead you to being successful, that lead to big results? Boom, there's the title of the first book, Small Ball, Big Results. And then I thought I'd be kind of fun with it. And I was going to make every chapter the inning of a baseball game. So chapter one, and each one had a topic. So one chapter is about trust. One chapter was about every role on a team matters. One chapter was about finding purpose in your work. And I would do a top of the first and the bottom of the first. And so one half would be a baseball story and one half would be a business story from the podcast, because the podcast led to all this content. And then when book two came around, I thought, I live in this world. I mean, I talked about my dreams, but I live in this world of not every day, but so often when I'm interviewing a star of the game and maybe he just made it to the big leagues, the answer always ends up being, this is what I dreamed of growing up. I'm like, I've been able to be around and ride shotgun or be the fly on the wall for all these dream stories. How did they get there? So the second book really became a book about grit and resilience, baseball and business stories, anything from a star musician, I guess I don't know if they call them stars, but like a great musician, to a billionaire CEO, to the star of the baseball team, to the role player on the baseball team, and on and on and on, to a chapter about my mom, who had her own remix. And I'd love, Mom, to call you a Gen Xer, but she's a baby boomer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my mom, and I wrote actually 2 chapters in Small Ball, Big Dreams, Tabatha, about this, about 2 really inspiring women. The first was my mom, who was told going to college on the East Coast, not far from where she grew up in the 60s, that women, when they graduate from college, can either be nurses or teachers. Those are the choices. Think about how far we've come. Think about how much further we have to go. But I thought, I'm going to write about my mom, because my mom was a music teacher, and then she stopped teaching when my brother and I were born. She went back to community college, learned how to be, at the time, a computer programmer. Now we'd call it coding, and eventually ended up working in corporate America, writing programs for companies that were trading stocks and bonds. Then her company was eventually bought out by a bank, and then a bigger bank, and then a Bank of America-sized bank. And she's traveling the world as in leadership all over to Asia and Europe, in this career that she never thought could happen. There's a lot of inspiration in that, and the message being that we may not even be told about dreams, because we might be told they're not possible, but they actually can happen. And the corresponding story, or at least a similar story, is there's a chapter in the book on a woman by the name of Susan Waldman. She is now the longtime radio announcer for the New York Yankees. She was the first woman to be doing sports radio in the country, and the amount of discrimination and abuse that she took, and then to be the first woman in the booth. And she talked about how it's finally starting to change, but the death threats, the bomb threats she was getting back in the, in the 80s. Susan, when I told her of that Yankee Stadium a couple of years ago, I said, I want to write about you. I'd had her on my podcast. I want to write about you. My mom was told that growing up, and they're around the same age, that you could only be, and she goes, teacher or nurse. She cut me right off. I'm like, all right, that wasn't just my mom's story. And so Susan Waldman was in theater, maybe not quite teacher nurse, but Susan was on Broadway. And she was also, as a huge sports fan, she would go and sing the anthem at a lot of these games because she thought, hey, I love baseball and it'll get me in for free. And she started meeting people, and she could perform, of course. And she ended up eventually she said, you know what? I don't want to be typecast as the mom as I'm getting older on stage for every single Broadway musical that I'm in. And now she has been the longtime voice of the New York Yankees. She was just inducted a couple years ago into the Sports Radio Hall of Fame. So the books are chock full of just hopeful stories, sometimes some hard, tough stories, but always with inspiration. And to me, that feels good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm smiling just hearing your summary of the stories. I think that is so incredible. And kudos to your mom and Susan for, being
awesome.
bold and stepping outside of that box, because it's still happening. There's still people trying to keep us in a box, and
100%. And it's happening every single day.
Okay.
And it doesn't, by the way, that doesn't have to be a discussion of politics. It turns into a discussion of politics. How about just championing people? I mean, that's really all it is. The late owner of the Kansas City Royals was a gentleman by the name of David Glass. He passed away in January of 2020 at 83 years old, which told me that he had an idea in his head that, you know what? At 83, it might be time to check out now with this pandemic coming. He, of course, didn't know that yet. But David Glass, who grew up humble beginnings in Southwest Missouri, had the twang to go with it. He was the former CEO of Walmart. He climbed the ranks of Walmart, and he was the one that came up with the idea of putting grocery stores in Walmart. And, I tell that to audiences sometimes because I'm like, most people wouldn't even think of a Walmart without a grocery store, or a Target. I mean, he wasn't Target, but right. I mean, but that wasn't, if you think back to when we were growing up, it was Kmart, and there wasn't a grocery store in there. That was a separate thing. So he came up with that idea, eventually bought the Kansas City Royals, sold the Royals a couple of months before his death for $1 billion. I'd say that he lived a very, very good life. But one of the last things he said to me, and I kind of mentioned this earlier in the podcast, and this is wisdom from a billionaire. He says, everything we do in life is about people. Whether it's business or baseball, it's all about people. There's that link again. Like, as long as people like you and people like me can help people get better at what they're doing and connecting and doing all these things, then hopefully these opportunities come for everyone, for the Susans and for my mom and for everyone out there, because they deserve it if they're putting in the hard work and they're qualified.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I just love that so much. Just, it is always about people, and it's easy for people to forget that, right? And we get so wrapped up in all the things that are going on around us that we have no control over, but you do have control over you and how you choose to treat people and what you do to help people. Total rabbit trail. My brain is like a squirrel at a rave. So we're going to go here. I was looking on the Nextdoor app last night. Not good for my mental health because, somebody posts something that they're excited about that they posted, went political like it tends to do on Nextdoor and all these things, right? And finally,
the algorithms.
I couldn't not. And so finally I just said, well, it's so great to see our democracy in action. Good on you, whichever way you decide to vote. Yay. And then I just thought, let's try to make kindness a little bit better in this community. Something like that. Like, there's no need to be nasty about a simple post, right? And then I said, well, you know what today is? October 9th, I went and created a post. Today is National Human Kindness Day in our community. I'm making it up. It's my own Hallmark holiday.
I love it.
And I put this whole post and it got so many likes and thumbs up and comments. I haven't even gotten back to it. But I was walking my dog the other day, and a neighbor who lives in the court, he's an older guy named Frank. He said, "Oh, I have something for you. Can you come over here real quick?" And me, I'll follow anybody into their garage, apparently. So I did. If I ever go missing, it's because someone said, "Hey, I got something for you," or "Come see
Go
my
check the
puppy."
neighbor's garage.
Right. It's usually going to be a puppy that causes the problem. But in this case, I just followed him. Anyway, he made me this really cute rock. He paints rocks and they're all over his garden and they're so beautiful. But he made me a little candy corn one for Halloween just because I walk my dog in his court. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's just so kind, like just thoughtful. And so I posted that little picture with that blurb. But kind of back to your point, it is always about people and how you treat people. They'll never forget. Frank literally gave me a rock that he spent time painting, and I will literally be going to get Frank a little goodie at the holidays because I want to make sure that he knows that meant something and I want to turn it around. And
It's beautiful.
anyway, so that's how we are. I know we're coming up on time, but something I wanted to ask you is you've got your hands in so many things, speaking, being an author, an entrepreneur, you've got your podcast, your broadcasting. What do you do to make sure that you are continuing to take consistent actions? You mentioned consistency in the beginning. What do you have a routine? How do you make sure that you're doing the right things for yourself at the right time?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think that I'll be searching for the ultimate answer for that for the rest of my life. And as long as I'm getting closer to it every single day, well, I might not get closer to it on some days, but as long as I'm trending in that direction, then I think there's improvement, there's growth. Um, I'll say this: I'm wired. I don't know if I always was. I'm wired to do live television. I've done it for so long. I host over 300 live shows a summer, and there are no nerves with it. I'm not saying that I want things to go wrong. I definitely do not. But there's nothing I haven't seen that I can't roll with. I'll see something new every day in terms of a weird play on the field or whatever, but like there's not a whole lot that's going to freak me out in terms of live television. And so that's a very comforting thing. But living that way for so long, it could be very easy just to kind of wake up and go every day. And, like I said, I don't like scripts and all that type of stuff. But we all need some form of structure. Some people need every single bit structured. I can't work that way. But as I've taken on more responsibility, and by the way, when you say, I'd love to have 6 months off, it's nice. But for those of us that are that squirrel that are all over the place and wired in this way, it's nice for a little bit. But also, I just got done working 6 months of a season of 6 to 7 days a week of having to be on. And there has to be some structure in not just the hours in the day, but in the self-care. And so some things that I have figured out this year, this won't be groundbreaking to all of your audience, but I'll just share my experience, is that there are certain non-negotiables now. The number one non-negotiable to me is that before I do anything in the morning, I might get up and feed the dogs. I might take a quick glance at my phone to see if the kids texted from college or if there's a super important email. But unless it's like immediate, I'm pushing it away. I'm not going on to social media if I can help myself. I'm going to meditate at least 5 minutes, usually 10, sometimes 15 minutes. Whether that be about getting some energy for the day, whether that be an abundance mindset, whether that be gratitude. At least once a day, I have to do that, and I have to start my day with that. And then, 5 to 6 days a week, when things get really hectic, worst case 3 to 4. Like if we have a couple of day games, that'll mess me up. I've got to get out and do something workout wise, whether that's 20 minutes or whether that's an hour. I'm not a crazy workout person. I'm here to tell you right now, I've never run a marathon. I never will. I don't even know if I'll ever run a 5K. I don't like running, but I've got to do something to move, and I've got to take care of myself. And that's not something I always did before. So to me, when I do all of those things, I have more energy to bring to this interview here. We're in different time zones right now. So as we're recording this, it's towards the end of my day. But I feel like I can bring that energy any time of the day and be good because of taking care of myself. And of course, trying to make sure and trying to get better at this, at paying more attention to the family. And I think a lot of us that are high energy, on the go constantly. It's hard for us to stop and slow down. Just trying to preserve those moments, whether they be for the family or for myself, of just slowing things down and understanding that we don't have to do everything in this moment.
That's so good. Hoping our listeners were taking really good notes on that, because self-care looks different to everyone.
Yeah.
And I love how you put it. The running made me chuckle a little bit. I do 5Ks and 10Ks, but I don't run them. If somebody's chasing me with a knife, I'm probably going to turn around and fight back. I am not a runner. Not
I
built for
love
running,
that.
not built for speed in any
Yeah.
way, but I'll go walk
Yeah.
and have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So good. But so many ways to just get into your day. The meditation is outstanding, and just a great day to set your intention. A great way to set your intention as you're coming into the day, and making sure you're making that time for yourself and your family. I love that.
Yeah.
So I got one more last question, then we'll shift over to our wrap up. But my last question for you, because Gen X, to me, we're stepping into the next best chapter, honestly, whether that is in your career, your life, your relationships, whatever that looks like, right? But there are some people who are thinking it's too late. I'm too old. I didn't do it when I should have. And it's kind of heartbreaking when I hear that. So I'm curious to know, what would you say to someone who is in midlife and is thinking that their best, I'm going to use sports analogy, their best innings are behind them?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a golfer. I tried for a lot of years. I've mostly given up, but we'll hear the expression, I'm on the back nine. And I guess we are. I mean, for any of us like me that are in our 50s, we're at least halfway there. And I well, what do we always hear? Like 50s the new, whatever, that always changes. But I think for me, the beauty of where we're at as Gen Xers right now is that we have the knowledge and the wisdom to share with others and to help others and to help ourselves too. Right? How many things go on in our lives now that used to drive us crazy that just don't bother us anymore? It's because we've learned how to deal with it. We've learned that we probably made it a bigger thing than it was at the time. That's a sweet spot to be, because it's less stressful. I'm not saying there isn't stress, but I'm saying that things that used to stress me out don't stress me out the same way anymore. And I think it's just growth, whether that be from the meditation or whether that just be from missed opportunities and experiences along the way. But I think the flip side to that, Tabitha, because it's easy for me to sit here and say, hey, I'm still living my dream job. And oh, by the way, the thing that started as the side hustle that's become a main hustle part two that I love as much as I full well understand that there are a lot of people in life that may never find one of those things. It's my job, if I'm doing my role right as a motivational speaker, or just a friend, or as a mentor, to find the way for people to bring that out, to find that. It doesn't have to be the job, but it's got to be something. And so for me, if you're a Gen Xer and maybe you're someone that wants things to be the way they were way back when. By the way, we all would love for things to be back the way they were. Cat's out of the bag, the genie's out of the bottle. That's not happening anymore. So what I would really encourage people to do is to take the wisdom that you have, the life's wisdom that you have, but explore new things. And part of exploring new things means let yourself go down the YouTube rabbit hole. Go find and search for things that are of interest to you. Or maybe it is through ChatGPT, whatever it is. There's so much information and resources out there that can bring you whatever it is that gives you joy that we never had this easy access to before. And oh, by the way, while you're doing that, it's going to allow you to understand some new things in the way the younger generation is thinking. It's going to make you feel younger. So for me, I'm watching, I don't mean to get too off on a tangent here, although that's what I do. Do you notice that cable television is starting to disappear? You notice now. This could be a deeper discussion about the erosion of media and of the way the press is and the way it's viewed. The lines have been blurred with social media. It used to be that you could watch the game of the week on NBC or CBS or ABC, and then it was Fox. And now it might be on cable, or they might even be the Thursday night football game of the week can only be seen if you have an Amazon subscription on Amazon Prime. And I hear older generation saying, oh, this is ridiculous. I don't have access to this. What are they doing? The younger generation is like, all right, well, I'll just watch this on my phone. The world changes. It just does. And I think that when we embrace that change and understand that where we were in the past was a beautiful thing, but the same change that enabled my mom and Susan Waldman to be able to do the things that they did involved them not saying this is the way it was being open to it. And yes, it comes with danger. And yes, the genie that's out of the bottle right now is not good in a lot of ways. But I think there's so many opportunities for those of us that might be stuck in a rut to go learn some new things and be exposed to some new things.
Oh, so good. There's just so many things out there. I tried pickleball and aqua Zumba in the same week. There's just so many. I'm like, what's aqua Zumba? Let's do it. Yeah. There's nothing stopping us except maybe that occasional knee pain, but it's fine. There's so many things. Yeah. I've got friends that have started sourdough starting or started gardens or, whatever it is, something that they hadn't had time for before. Now that they're either working for themselves, semi-retired, whatever has shifted, they're like, oh my gosh, I have so much time and I'm loving this. Do you want some bread? I'm like, God, no, I don't. I can't have that much bread.
I got to go run. That guy Frank is chasing me with a rock.
Right.
Oh no, he just wants to give it to me. Okay.
It's just a present. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Joel, this was such a great conversation. I am sure that some of our listeners are feeling really inspired right now and still probably chuckling about all the sports analogies that happened today. Would love for you to let us know how our listeners can connect with you.
I'm all over social media and that's easy to find, but I think the one-stop shop is my website, which is joelgoldbergmedia.com. So just my name and media, joelgoldbergmedia.com. And within there, the books and the blog and the podcasts and all that stuff. But the only other thing that I would say too, and just check it out, is that within there, certainly within the blog part of the website, there's a chance to sign up for the newsletter. And I'll put out little stories like we're talking about, just one a week with inspiration, stories that would highlight what you just did with The Rock, that just bring people some perspective and some hope and some joy. And so if you're interested in more of these type of things, check that out. I'd love to hear from you, but joelgoldbergmedia.com is probably the easiest way.
Perfect. We'll make sure that gets into the show notes. And before we sign off, do you have any parting words of inspiration or advice you'd like to leave us with?
Just be good to people. I mean, we've talked about that all episode, and the beauty of it is you and I just really met. I feel like we know each other better after an hour. It's not a difficult thing to do, whether you're introverted, extroverted, whatever your interests are. When you just are a little curious and you're willing to listen to people and maybe willing to help people, or whether that be through advice or how can I help? What can I do? And sometimes it's just listening to people goes a really long way. And the other piece to that too, it feels good. We all need more of that, don't we?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. It has been a pleasure having you here, Joel. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on the Gen X Remix.
So good to be with you. Thanks, Tabatha.
Well, look at us talking about sports today. What a powerful conversation with Joel Goldberg. I love how he connected the dots between sports, leadership, and everyday life. His reminder that everything is about people is one thing I think we could all stand to revisit a little more often. If you're feeling inspired to build consistency, courage, and clarity in your own next act, be sure to check out my Freedom Builder AI system. It's your all-in-one toolkit with 5 Sherpas to help you go from idea to income without the overwhelm. You'll find the link in the show notes, or you can head over to the corporateescapesherpa.com. And be sure to visit Joel's website at joelgoldbergmedia.com and get on his newsletter list. It sounds like an amazing bit of inspiration delivered right to your inbox. Until next time, friends, keep remixing your story. And remember, it's never too late to build in your next big win. We'll see you next time.